As we welcome in Berish Gesseman, good to have you back. Stephen Holtzman, Baruch Ian, Irving Fishbaum, Mel Zachter, A.B. Spry, Shalom Fogel, Aaron Swade, Eddie Chazan, Nachman Chapler, Marshall Castle, Dr. Block, Yisrael Fisher, Rabbi Kranz, who had trouble getting on tonight, Michal, Avi Amen, Truvain Pollack, Moshe Lehman, Ilya Shutman, Abe Arbach, Yitzi Muller, Pesach Siegelman. Here in the shul we have Saba and Rich Leonard, Reb Kramer, Reb Gedalia Engel, Avram Schenkman. We're dedicated by Baruch Ian, Lila Nishmas, Esther Bas Yona, Yaakov Chaim Ben Abba, Avram Ben Shmuel HaKoyin, Lefur Shalema for Baruch Shalema Ben Lina, Aaron Swade for his first wife, Hannah Bas Shmuel, and his sister, Freda Bas Shol, by Mark Frankel, Lefur Shalema for Miriam Sarah Bas Sipora, Hannah Bas Gittel Esther, Beirach Goldwasser for Akar Satay, what Hashem did for his family, for the Chayli Yisrael, Lefur Shalema for my Shver Abigdai Ben Rivka, Yudis Cyril Bas Miriam, and Meir Ben Chaya Sarah. We welcome in the Haskell family, Dr. Matthew Guy, Akiva Feldman, David Helfgott on Kalaloshin. We are holding at the Mishnah on the bottom of Daf Samach Vavam and Beis. Mishnah on the bottom of Samach Vavam and Beis. I don't want to make the mistake of forgetting to mention it, so I'm going to tell you now. I'm going away for Shabbos to my son, to Shalom Zacher. The baby is not yet home from the hospital. The baby swallowed some of the mecronium, and they had to put the baby on oxygen for a little bit. So we'll learn for Hayelad Ben Chava. I mean, they say he's going to be fine, but the platelets are also a little low. They're not sure why. So we'll learn for the baby. He should have a refuah shalem b'sech shechel Yisrael. Anyway, so the Daf Yomi is going to be 15 minutes later. It's going to be 9:15. I just want to make sure that I'm back, and all settled back here with the setup and everything. So 9:15 tomorrow. Again, I apologize. It's a very late start tonight. I don't know why it took so long. Thank you for being so patient. We are holding at the new Mishnah on the bottom of Samach Vavam Beis. Kol Mokum Sheyesh Kiddushin, wherever there's Kiddushin, Ve'ein Aveira. Now that includes interesting cases. For example, a ger that marries a mamzeres, there's Kiddushin and there's no Aveira. So in all those cases, Havlad Hoylech Achar HaZocher. Now, that begs the question, that's not true with a ger that marries a mamzeres. A ger that marries a mamzeres, the child's a mamzer. So that's going to be an exception. But what's the classic case where there's Kiddushin and there's no Aveira, that it follows the father? Ve'izuzu kahenes leviya v'Yisraelis shenasu l'kayin levi v'Yisrael. So, for example, if a kayin marries a Yisraelis, there's Kiddushin, there's no Aveira, the child is like the father, the child's a kayin. If a Levi marries a Yisraelis, so the child is a Levi. If a Yisrael marries a kahenes, the child is a Yisrael. So where there's Kiddushin and there's no Aveira, the child follows the father. Next level. V'kol makom sheyesh Kiddushin v'yesh Aveira. If there's Kiddushin and there is an Aveira, so that means that Kiddushin is Toifsin, but there is an Aveira, so then Havlad Hoylech Achar HaPogan. Then the child goes after the one that has some kind of disqualification. Ve'ezuzu almanu l'kohen gadol, a widow that marries a kohen gadol. Now, a widow is not allowed to marry a kohen gadol, but when she marries, she becomes a chalala. She becomes nischaleles, and therefore the child will be like her. She's pogam, she's nifkam, she becomes blemish, so the child will be a challah. And so also grusha v'chalutza l'kohen hedyot. Now, mamzeres and nesina l'Yisrael. Again, there is Kiddushin. It's only a lav, so there is Kiddushin. So if a mamzeres or a nasan is from the Givainim, and they're not allowed to marry in Teretz Yisrael. So a ger Givaini, if a mamzeres or nesina marries Yisrael, or a bas Yisrael marries a mamzer and a nasan, so these are cases where there is Kiddushin, but there is an Aveira, because Yisrael is not allowed to marry a mamzer, a Kohen Gadol is not allowed to marry an almana. So there, the child follows the one that's blemished. So in the case of the nasan and the mamzer, or the mamzeres and the nesina, the child will be a mamzer or a nasan. The kol misha ein lo alav kiddushin. There's no kiddushin because it's a chorus or it is a bezdin. Like if a brother marries a sister. If a brother marries a sister, there's no kiddushin. But if that man would marry another woman, there would be kiddushin. So kol misha ein la alav kiddushin, aval yesh la ala cherim kiddushin. So the sister, if she marries a brother, there's no kiddushin. But if the sister marries another yid, there is kiddushin. So in such a case, havlad mamzer, the child is a mamzer. So that means that from any union that would be a chi of Mrs. Bezdin, or a union of, let's say, adultery, or an isikaris, like a brother, so the child is a mamzer. What's an example of such a union? That's somebody who sleeps with those that are forbidden with the laws of morality in the Torah. She just doesn't have Torah's Kiddushin at all. And that would be a Goya or a Shivka. A Goya or Shivka doesn't have Kiddushin at all. They're not Torah's Kiddushin. So then Havlad Kemaisa. The child is like her. So if he marries a Shivka, the child is going to be a Shivka or an Eved. If he marries a Goya, the child is going to be a Goy. He says, Havlad Shivka v'nachris. So now we're going to work through these rules and their exceptions, because we're going to find that there's exceptions. Now, we'll see that the Mishnah is not exhaustive, and that's why it says, Kol Mokum Sheyesh. Kol Mokum Sheyesh comes to include those things that are not mentioned in the Mishnah. And then when it says, the Lashon Ve'ez Zezu, Ezezu means it's only in this case, but there are exceptions. So there are other cases that were not included, and there are exceptions that are not stated. There are exceptions to the rule. I should welcome in Naftali Jablin, who just joined us, Yitzi Padower, who it's absolutely wonderful to have you join us, Shimon Deer, who I am thrilled to have on board. Now, Kol Mokum Sheyesh Kiddushin. Any place where there's Kiddushin and there's no Aveira, it goes after the man. Amalei Reb Shimon Reb Yochanan Klalahu. Is this a true, a complete principle that brooks no exceptions? To Kol Mokum Sheyesh Kiddushin, where there's Kiddushin ve'ein Aveira avlad hoylech achar hazaka. Oh, I'll give you a case right away that it's not so. Variger shenos mamzeres, a ger, since kahal gerim lo yikrei kahal, so a ger is allowed to marry a mamzeres. So that's a case where there's Kiddushin, there's no Aveira, but the child is a mamzer, so it doesn't go after the Zachar. The Yesh Kiddushin, ve'ein Aveira, v'avlad hoylech achar hapogim. The child doesn't go after the father, it goes after the mamzeres, because the child is a mamzer. The Tanya ger shenos mamzeres, a ger that marries mamzeres, havlad mamzer, divrei Reb Yosi. Amalei, so he says, you think it's allowed? You think a ger is allowed to marry? Amalei, mi savrit masnisin Reb Yosi. You think the mission is going according to Reb Yosi that says a ger is allowed to marry a mamzeres? Masnisin Reb Yehuda, who holds kal gerim ikrei kahal, the amar ger lo yisa mamzeres. Oh, then it fits with the rule. V'yesh Kiddushin, v'yesh Aveira. That's a case with his Kiddushin, but there's an Aveira because the ger is not allowed to marry a mamzeres, and we said with his Kiddushin and there's an Aveira, the child follows the pogum, the blemished one. Havlad hoylech achar hapogim. So then the Gemara says, oh, so that if that's an example of yesh Kiddushin, v'yesh Aveira, why wasn't it included in that section of the Mishnah? V'nisnaye. So the Gemara says it doesn't say all the cases. Tana kol mokum de seifa. it says the kol mokum in the Sefer that every place with his Kiddushin and is an Aveira, la'asuye, to include the case of a ger that marries a mamzeres. It's going according to Rabbi Yossi that a ger that marries a mamzeres is allowed. We said if there's Kiddushin and there's no Aveira, it follows the Zachar. That's why it says a miut, v'tana ezuzu. What are cases where there's Kiddushin and there's no Aveira that follows the Zachar? Only these cases, and not that case of a ger. Ezuzu l'ma'ute, to exclude the case of a ger that marries a mamzeres, that even though there's Kiddushin and no Aveira, the child goes after the pogrom and not after the Zachar. Ve'ezuzu v'sulai, and only these cases and not any other cases. I have another case where there's Kiddushin and there's no Aveira and it follows the Zachar. V'arei chalol shenos abas Yisrael, a chalol that marries abas Yisrael. Chalol is a child from a forbidden Kohanic union, like an almana to Kohen Gadol, a grush v'chalutza to Kohen Hedyot. And a chalol that marries abas Yisrael, they're allowed. The Beis Yaakov girl is allowed to marry him. So there's yesh Kiddushin, v'yesh Aveira. Yesh Kiddushin, v'ein Aveira. There's Kiddushin, there's no Aveira, and the child follows the Zachar. The child is a chalol. The yesh Kiddushin, v'ein Aveira, and avlad hoylech achar Zachar. So why doesn't it say that case? Says the Gemara, holoi kash, it's not a difficulty, because this is going according to Rav Dustoi. Rav Dustoi says that a Beis Yaakov girl is a mikvah tara l'chalolim, and the child is not like the mother. The child is not a chalala. Says Gemara, the child is not a chalala. The child is not a chalala. Rav Dustoi ben Yehuda Svirulei, that holds that a bas Yisrael is a mikvah tara l'chalal, and the child is not like the Zachar. Says the Gemara, but what about?
Isn't that only for a girl?
Huh?
But not a boy.
Only for a girl, correct. Only for a girl. Says the Gemara, Vari Yisrael shenasa chalala. But what about a Yisrael that marries a chalala? The yesh Kiddushin, the ein Aveira, and the din is that havlad hoylech achar Zachar. So why doesn't it say that case? That a Yisrael that marries a chalala, there's Kiddushin and there's no Aveira, and the child follows the father, and the child is kosher. Says the Gemara, you're right, that's included in the kol mokum of the Reish. It says kol mokum yesh Kiddushin ve'ein Aveira, the child follows the Zachar, so the kol mokum comes to include that case. Tana kol mokum the Reish la'asuyeh. Says Gemara, well, say it outright. Why do you need to include it from kol mokum? Say it outright. V'nisnaye behedya. So he says contextually it doesn't work, because what are you going to say? Kahanis, Leviah, Yisraelis, and a chalala that marries a Kohen Levi and a Yisrael? That's not true. A Kohen is not allowed to marry a chalala. Says the Gemara, Mishum Deloy Masnala, because it wouldn't fit contextually. Heichi nisnei kohenes v'leviah v'Yisraelis v'chalala shenot nisis l'kohen Levi v'Yisrael. A chalala can't marry a kohen. The chalala l'kohen michazia. Says the Gemara, but there's another case. V'iked Rabba Bar Chana. The Amar Rabba Bar Chana Amar Reb Yochanan. Now we know that a third generation Mitzri is allowed to marry into Klal Yisrael. That means if an Egyptian converted, the first generation is not allowed to marry into Klal Yisrael. So they can marry a ger, but they're not, or a fellow Mitzri, a ger Mitzri. They can't marry into Klal Yisrael. The second generation can't marry. A third generation can. So the Gemara says, "Va'iked Rabba Bar Chana, Dam Rabba Bar Chana Am Reb Yochanan, Mitzri Sheni Shenasa Mitzris Rishayna." A second generation Egyptian man that marries a first generation Egyptian woman, So, b'no shlishi have. The child is a shlishi. So you see that this is a case of yesh kedushin, ve'ein avera, because the mitzvah sheni is allowed to marry the mitzvah rishayna, and the child follows the zachar and becomes a mitzvah shlishi. So that's another case of yesh kedushin ve'ein avera, and it follows the zachar. So it says, well, you're right, that's included in the kol makom, tana kol makom dereisha la'asuyeh. Ul Rav Dimi the Amar, according to Rav Dimi, that says that if a second generation man marries a first generation woman, the child is only a second generation, so it doesn't follow the Zachar, so that's a kasha on the rule of the Mishnah. The Mishnah says with this Kiddushin and there's no Aveira, it follows the Zachar. But according to Rav Dimi, who says that if a second generation marries a first generation woman, the child is a second generation, so there it doesn't follow the Zachar. So then we'll say, Eizuzu lemute. The Eizuzu comes to exclude only these cases and not that case. Says the Gemara, throwing a lot of cases at us. Va'ika dechi asa Ravin Amar Reb Yochanan, ba'umais halach achar hazachar. Now we're going to learn in detail on Amid Beis that this means that to determine whether, let's say, a Canaanite man married a Grecian woman. So the nationality follows the male. So ba'uma is halach achar hazachar, but niskairu, if they convert, halach achar apogim shebishneim. So we'll see that this means that if a ger, if a ger Amoni marries a woman Mitzri, they both convert. So there we say, we make it the worser. So that if the child is a male, it has a din of an Ammoni, which is also for 10 generations. If the child is a female, so if it would be an Ammonis or a Moavis, it would be permitted immediately, like Rus. So then we say it has a din of a Mitzri, that it goes to the 3rd generation. So there we say that that's a kasha. Because there we say that although it's yesh kedushin ve'ein aveira, a ger amoni is allowed to marry a ger mitzris, yet we don't go after the zachar. We go after whatever is the worser of the two. So you're right, that's an exception. Tana ezuzulim ute. So now we're going to try to figure out why it has to say kol makam l'rabbis and ezuzu l'meute in the reisha, and why it has to say kol makam l'rabbis and ezuzu l'meute in the sefer. So just hold on to your couples a little bit over here. Says the Gemara, Hi Mai. This is something we would say to Marshall. Hi Mai. What's going on over here? Let's examine. If you'll say that our Mishnah is going according to the Shita of Rabbi Yehuda, who says, who we learned above, that a ger is not allowed to marry a mamzeres, so then we could put together all the pieces of our Mishnah. Kol makom dereisha, that there's more cases of yesh kiddushin ve'ein aveira, that we go basa the zachar, that there is kiddushin and there's no aveira, we go basa the father. The kol makom comes la'asuya Yisrael shenasa chalala, a Yisrael that marries a chalala, where we say that the child is there's kiddushin no aveira, the child fathers the father. Uda Rabba Babachana, and also the case of Rabba Babachana, a mitzvah sheni that marries a mitzvah rishayna, According to Rabbi Barbachana, the din is the child follows the father and is a third generation child. Ezuzu, and the Ezuzu comes to tell you that there's exceptions to this rule of Yesh Kiddushin Ve'ein Aveira. L'mu'utei de Rav Dimi, it's coming to exclude the case of Rav Dimi, right? Rav Dimi says, if you hold like Rav Dimi, that a Mitzri Sheni that marries a Mitzri Rishon, the child is a Sheni. So then, according to Rav Dimi, that would be that would be an exception where there's Kiddushin and there's no Aveira, but the child doesn't follow the Zachar. The child follows the mother, who's only a Mitzvah Rishayna, and therefore the child's a Mitzvah Sheni. And then the Kol Mokam of the Reisha would only come to include the case of Yisrael Shenasa Halala. And the Ravin. What's the case of Ravin? The case of Ravin is the case of Ravin. So many cases here. And the case of Ravin, the case of Ravin is where the Ger Ammoni married the Ger Mitzvahs, that we say that it doesn't always follow the father. We said if it's a boy, it follows the father and it's an Ammoni. If it's a girl, it doesn't follow the father Ammoni, because an Ammoni a girl is permitted right away, but follows the mother. So that would be an exception also of a case of Kol Makom Sheyesh Kiddushin Ve'ein Aveira. It doesn't follow the father, but rather it depends what the gender of the child is. Kol Makom the Seifa, the Kol Makom of the Seifa, remember the rule of the Seifa is where there's Kiddushin and there's an Aveira that we follow the Pogam. So, La'asiyah ger shenasa mamzeres. According to Rabbi Yehuda, remember we said, according to Rabbi Yehuda, a ger is not allowed to marry a mamzeres because kal ger mikre kol. So that's a case of an there's kedushin and there's an aveira, and the child follows the pogam. The child is a mamzer. So that works perfectly according to Rabbi Yehuda. Eliyamrit Rabbi Yosi. So, Kol Makom D'Reisha Kid Amra. The Kol Makom D'Reisha includes all that we said, that it includes the case of Yisrael Shenasa Halala, and Ezuzu K'di Amrinon, the Ezuzu comes to exclude the case of a Ger Ammoni that marries a Mitzvah. Ela Kol Makom D'Seifa La'asiyemai. But the Kol Makom D'Seifa, what's it coming to include? Because according to Rabbi Yosi, the case of Ger Shenasa Mamzeres is not a case where there's an Aveira, because he holds that a Ger is allowed to marry a Mamzeres. Says the Gemara, well, you notice that according to Rabbi Yehuda, you didn't explain one of the stanzas. You didn't explain what Ezuzu in the Sefer comes to exclude. What does it come to exclude of where there's Kiddushin and there's an Aveira, that it doesn't go after the Pogam? L'tamech Rabbi Yehuda Ezuzu the Sefer Lomali. Since it says in the Reisha Ezuzu to exclude a case where we don't, where there's Kiddushin and there's no Aveira and it doesn't follow the Zachar, Tana Sefer Ezuzu, for symmetry it says in the Sefer Ezuzu, even though it doesn't exclude anything. Hachanami here too, as we welcome in Yehuda from Yerushalayim on this beautiful Thursday night, Kvoid Erev Shabbos Parshas Noach. As I failed to mention it, I should never fail to mention this. Our thoughts go to everybody in Eretz Yisrael, our brave soldiers at the front, our hostages, that they should be found, our thousands of people in the hospital, they should recover, and the whole world Jewry should feel more secure and safe. And it's good to have Elliot Udell joining us, Richard Rosenzweig joining us, although, of course, Richard Rosenzweig, his computer must be on the blink again, otherwise he would definitely be with us on Zoom. Says the Gemara, Hachanami, so according to Rabbi Yosi too, even though according to Rabbi Yosi, we said that there doesn't seem to be any reason why it says Kol Mokum in the Sefer, there isn't anything else to exclude. It's not coming to exclude. There isn't anything else to include. It's not coming to include the case of ger she'nosa mamzeres, because that's not a case of yesh kedushin v'yesh avera. Because according to Rabbi Yossi, a ger is allowed to marry mamzeres. No problem. Because really there's nothing to be included from the kol makom in the sefer, but rather hakanami aidi the tana reisha kol makom, so tanya nami sefer kol makom. So now we're going to just clarify some of the things that we mentioned coming into this discussion. Gufa. Ki aser Ravin Amar Rabbi Yochanan, when Ravin arrived, he said in the name Rabbi Yochanan, Ba'umais, when it comes to nationalities, halach achar azachar, we go after the male. Nizgairu, when they convert, halach achar apogam shebishneim, we go after the blemish of the two of them. So first we're going to understand what it means by goyim, we go after the nationality of the father. Now this has a tremendous bearing because you're not supposed to keep alive a Canaanite. It says about a Canaanite, lo yisachaya kol neshama. So it's important to know, can you buy an Eved, even if you're not killing him, you're not allowed to buy an Eved Canaanite. So you have to know if the child has a din of a Canaanite, you can't buy him. If he has a din of a Greek, you could buy him. So says the Gemara, what does it mean by the nations you go after the male? Kedetanya, minayin le'echad min ha'umais. How do we know that if a Greek man, sheba'ala kananis, that marries, or sleeps, because there's really no marriage, that sleeps with a Canaanite woman, v'hoylid ben, and has a child, how do you know that that child has a din of a Greek? Because it goes to the father. She'ata rashay l'knoisei be'evet. You could buy him as a slave. He doesn't have a din of a Canaanite. He has a din of a Greek. Ta'amalaimer v'gam mibnei atoishavim, from those settlers hagorim imchem, that sojourn with you. Sojourn means that they're not originally from the land. So that means that if a Greek man that came to sojourn in Eretz Yisrael married a Canaanite woman, mehem tiknu. So you see that we go basar the father, and the child has a din of a Greek. Yochel af evet shabala shivcha min ha'umos. I might think an evet Kanani that marries a Grecian woman, v'hoylid ben, and has a child she'ata rashay l'knoisei be'evet, that you could buy that child as an evet, and that we say that the child maybe goes busting a mother and it's a Grecian. Talmud Leimer asher holidu ba'artzechem. Only those that were born in your land, meaning that the man usually follows the woman. So that means that a Greek came and lived in the land and had from a Canaanite woman a child, you could buy that child because it goes basa the father, and then the child is a Greek. Not from a case where the father was a Canaanite. He went to Greece to marry the woman, and then they came back to sojourn in the land. In other words, the child was born from a Grecian woman, and then they came back to sojourn in the land, but the father was a Canaanite. In such a case, the child has a din of the father, and is a din of lo yisachai kol neshama, and you're not allowed to buy. So you see, again, that when it comes to when they are goyim, the child follows the father. So if the father is a Canaanite, you're not allowed to buy the slave. If the father is a Greek, you're allowed to buy the slave. Now, before I learn the next Gemara, just like Rus HaMoyaviyah was permitted, because it's Mo'avi v'loy Mo'avis, the same thing is true by Ammoni. Ammoni v'loy Ammonis. So even a first generation born Ammonite woman is permitted, but an Ammoni, the male side is forbidden forever. By a mitzri, it makes no difference to gender. The third generation is permitted. The first and the second generation are forbidden. The next Gemara is going to teach us that when they convert, we take the raw deal of either side. So that if a ger amoini marries a ger mitzris, if it's a boy, it's also. If it's a girl, if it would be from the Ammoni side, it would be permitted right away. But we say that it's a mitzri and it's not permitted till the third generation. So now let's see that inside.
Can I just ask, when they're not permitted, what does that mean? Does it mean the goyim? What status do they have before the
No, they're regular gerim.
Are they gerim?
Of course, I keep. They could only marry either a regular ger, or if they want to advance in generation, they could marry their own kind, and they could, depending whether you hold, we go basu the father. So then, if a mitzri rishon marries a mitzri sheni, the child would be a mitzri shlishi, or it'll be mitzri sheni. Now, nisgairu, when they convert, halach achara pogim shebishneim. Now this is tricky. It's just a little trick. B'mai, ilema b'mitzvi shenasa amoinis. The amoinis is not a pogim. Rus wasn't a pogim. That's not a case of pogim shebishneim. My pogimika amoini v'lei amoinis. The ger amoinis is permitted right away. Rather, the case is the flip way. Ela b'amoini shenasa mitzvahs. It's a ger amoini that marries a gioris mitzvah. So here we say, izachar have, if it's a male, so we say it's an amoini, and it's forbidden always. Izachar have, shadyab asri didei. We put it to the side of the father, who's an amoini, and that child continues being asr always. The imna keva, if it's a female, so if we would say it's amoini, she would be permitted immediately. But we say it's a mitzri, shadia basra dida. We go basa the mother who's a mitzvah. So if let's say she was a mitzvah rishayna, this child would be a mitzvah sheni and not a monis, which would be permitted right away. Now, this is not hard, by the way, Rabbi say, so don't get scared. I mean, these are long dafin. It doesn't help that we got a late start. I'm very sorry about that. As we welcome in Harrison Kletzel and David Tesler. Please, if all of you would come on zoomdaf.com, Marshall might have a chance to get bourbon. And he's very parched. He's very parched.
I'm in pain. Let's do it.
Yeah.
Aaron Swade's going to share it with me, so come on, guys, let's do it.
So we know, the Mishnah says that if there's no Kiddushin and there's an Aveira, the child's a mamzer. So we know that by Chayve Misas Bezdin or by Isurei Koris, there's no Kiddushin, so the child's a mamzer. That means that a brother sleeps with a sister or adultery, there's no Kiddushin, the child's a mamzer. A man sleeps with his daughter or stepdaughter or step-granddaughter, right? So there's no Kiddushin, the child's a mamzer. So the first thing we have to know is, how do we know that if a brother says to a sister, it's incestuous, but how do we know that if a brother says to a sister, Hariyat Mekudeshesli, how do we know that there's no Kiddushin? How do we know? How do we know that if a man says to his wife's sister, Hariyat Mekudeshesli, to his sister-in-law, Hariyat Mekudeshesli, how do we know that there's no Kiddushin? So the Gemara says, Kol she'ein lo alav Kiddushin, if there's no Kiddushin, minani mili, and he has it from the name of Rabbi Yanai, and it's said also by Rav Acha, the son of Rava. And he has it from Rabbi Yossi Aglili. There's two sources. Amakra, it says, by get. V'yotza mibeisai, he goes out from his house. She goes out from his house. V'holcha v'hoisa le'ish acher, and she marries another person. La'acherim, that means that there's only marriage if she marries an outsider. V'loy l'kroivim, but not a relative. Says the Gemara, but maybe that's only a very, very, very close relative. If she goes and marries her husband's son, which is a Isser Misa. Says the Gemara, well, Ben behed yiksibbe. The son, that she can't marry her husband's son, that's a beferish pasuk. It says, Lo yikach ish es eishes aviv. A man can't sleep with his father's wife. So that there it's clearly that she can't go and marry his son, because that would mean he's marrying his father's wife. So achar lamali, why does it say achar? Shmami no la'acherim, to anybody else, v'loy l'kroivim. Says, wait. We're saying that we learn out that Kiddushin is not Taifsin. The pasuk of Lo yikach ish es eishes aviv maybe is saying that it's not allowed. But if you do it, maybe there's Kiddushin. Maybe Aidi v'Aidi leben, only for such a close relationship as a son. And Holachat Chila, one pasuk is telling you you're not allowed to do it. V'Hode Eved, and the other pasuk is coming to tell me that if you do it, the Kiddushin is not Taifas. Says the Gemara, L'chat Chila, that you're not allowed to do it, L'chat Chila, how we know mi'achos ish nafka. Oma achos isha. Madach, a wife's sister, which is only bekaris. Like tikadesh, you're not allowed to lechatchila marry. Chayve misas bezdin, like your husband's son, like kol shchein. And therefore, when it says lo yikach ish es eishes aviv, that's coming to tell you that there's no kedushin. And then the pasuk of la'acherim v'lo l'kroivim, that's coming to tell you that there's no kedushin elsewhere. Says the Gemara, well, the ema aidi va'aidi ba'achos isha. Maybe both are talking about a wife's sister, and the pasuk that tells you you're not allowed to be mekadosh your wife's sister, that's just that l'chatchila you're not allowed to marry her. And then it says that if you did, it's not even, there's no kedushin. So the Gemara says, you're right. It's talking about achos isha. And we learn out the other Isurei Arayis from achos isha. In a chanami. Ashkechan achos isha, shar aroyis minalan. How do we know other forbidden relationships that carry an Isur of chorus, like an ant? How do you know that if you try to marry them that there's no kedushin? Yalfina me'achos isha. We learn out from achos isha. Ma'achos isha miuchedes. It's distinct. She ever. It's a forbidden relationship. And you're chayiv if you do it willfully chorus. And if you do it unwittingly, a sin offering. Kedushin. Afkol she ever. Any other immoral relationship, like a sister, like a aunt. Chayav and al zdoina chorus. You're chayiv for willful chorus. And for unwittingly a sin offering, like Tafseba Kedushin. Says, well, you're right. Most Isurei Arayis you could learn out from achos isha. Bishleime kulu askin. Ela eishes ish ve'eishes ach ikar lemifrach. We could say a married woman and a brother's wife is different. Because malachos isha shekain ein lo heter b'mkay mitzvah. There's never an example where you're allowed to marry your wife's sister for a mitzvah. That's not true by your brother's wife. Your brother's wife, you're allowed to marry her in the case of Yibam. In the case of Yibam. You see, a brother's wife is usually also even after the brother died. But in the case where the brother died childless, there's a mitzvah. There's no mitzvah by achos isha. Also, Eishes Ish, you wouldn't be able to learn from a comparison to an Achos Isha. Nami Yikil Mifrach. Malahanach, an Achos Isha is never permitted in the lifetime of the wife. Could never marry, even if you divorce your wife, you're not allowed to marry her. So, Malahanach shekain ein lo heter b'chayei oisron. An achas isha you can never marry during the lifetime of your wife. Toimer be'ishes ish you could marry in the lifetime if he divorces her. Sheyesh lo heter b'chayei oisron. Says Gemara, you're right. We can't learn it out from a mamatzino, a simple comparison. We have a chekish. El Amar Rav Yainav, Yisem Rav Huna B'Reid Rabbi Yeshua, Amakra, Kol Asher Ya'aseh Mikol HaTo'eves Ha'ela, whoever does any of these abominations, B'Nichresu, so by bunching up all the Yisur HaRoyas together, we darshin Hukshu Kol HaRoyas Kulam Lachos Isha, we therefore juxtapose all the HaRoyas to a wife's sister. Ma'achas Isha, there's no Kiddushin, Lo Tafsi Ba Kiddushin. Af Kol HaRoyas Kulam, so all the other HaRoyas, Lo Tafsi Ba Kiddushin. Okay, Rabbi, so another jam-packed daf in the books. We're going to do the Mishnah Yomis now. I just want to remind you that the shir, by the way, it's 9 o'clock now, so if you didn't hear the Chumash shir from last night, 5784, you could catch it on TorahAnytime.com, where it's viewed live. You go to the main page, you press live, then scroll down to my flyer and push it, and you could hear tonight's share. Of course, you could catch it on YouTube. I put on YouTube, it's amazing, I put a share, Noach and the Good Times. It already had 450 views. You see when it has a good title and it's short, then then everybody watches it. There's also a